Breaking news from around your world on this Friday, March 29th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. A bipartisan bicameral group of lawmakers introduced legislation Thursday to put an end to the National Security Agency's U.S. phone data and text message collection program. Senators Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, and Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul, alongside Representatives Justin Amash, a Republican from Michigan, and Democrat Zoe Lofgren of California, said the measure was intended to defend U.S. citizens against needless privacy incursions and government overreach. All are known to be civil libertarians. Wyden said, "It's time, finally, to put a stake in the heart of this unnecessary government surveillance program and start to restore some of Americans' liberties." The NSA declined to comment. The collection program, first implemented in the aftermath of 9/11, allowed the NSA to collect details known as metadata about which phone numbers had been connected and when. However, call content was not collected or monitored. In 2013, the program was exposed by former intelligence contractor Edward Snowden, whose disclosures triggered a heated public debate over the government's surveillance powers. The 2015 USA Freedom Act, passed by Congress in Snowden's aftermath, changed how the NSA was allowed to store and access telecommunications data. Rather than collecting and storing data itself, the agency was required to make direct requests via a FISA court from telecommunications companies. The relevant provisions of the USA Freedom Act expire December 15th. The White House has not yet signaled whether it will push for a full reauthorization of the law. U.S. and European regulators knew at least 2 years before a Lion Air jet crash that the usual method for controlling a Boeing 737 MAX's nose angle might not work in conditions similar to those in two recent disasters, according to a document that was shown. European Space Agency certified the plane as safe in part because it said additional procedures and training would clearly explain to pilots the unusual situations in which they would need to manipulate a rarely used manual wheel to control or trim the plane's angle. Those situations, however, were not listed in the flight manual, according to a copy from American Airlines seen by Reuters. In the ESA document, the regulator said simulations showed the electric thumb switches could not keep the 737 MAX properly trimmed under certain conditions, including those of the Lion Air and Ethiopian airline crashes, according to the Indonesian preliminary report and a source with knowledge of the Ethiopian air traffic control recordings. The trim system adjusts the angle of the nose. If the nose is too far up, the jet risks entering a stall. In the deadly Lion Air crash in October, the pilots lost control after initially countering MCAS, a new automated anti-stall feature that was pushing the aircraft nose down based on data from a faulty sensor, according to a preliminary report from Indonesian investigators released in November. South Korea's presidential Blue House said Friday President Moon Jae-in is to meet with President Donald Trump at their first summit since U.S.-North Korea talks collapsed in Vietnam. Moon is to visit the U.S. Capitol for 2 days, accompanied by First Lady Kim Jong-suk. A spokesman for Moon told reporters at a press briefing the next U.S.-South Korea summit is to take place on April 10th and 11th in Washington. The White House, in a separate statement, confirmed the summit would take place on April 11th. Trump and Moon are also meeting for the first time since November 20th, when they spoke on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Seoul has been concerned the breakdown of U.S.-North Korea talks could negatively affect the thaw in ties with Pyongyang. At his first political rally since the end of the Russia collusion probe, President Trump on Thursday accused backers of the investigation of trying to overturn the 2016 election and attempted illegally to claim power. Declaring the country hurt by the probe, Trump called his opponents losers and celebrated the fact that the investigation had come to a close. After 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead. The collusion delusion is over, Trump told a crowd of thousands at a Grand Rapids arena. On Sunday, Attorney General William Barr released a summary of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's more than 300-page report about his investigation into Russia's role in the 2016 election. The investigation did not establish that members of Trump's campaign conspired with Russia during the election. Democrats were not satisfied with Barr's determination and have demanded to see the report in full. Some Republicans, including Trump himself, have also voiced support for releasing it. Trump spent the first 2 years of his administration confronting a cloud of suspicion over how he, a political novice, won the White House. With that cloud largely lifted, Trump has let loose, calling out those who supported the investigation and referring to evil acts of treason by his opponents. He said the Russia witch hunt was a plan by those who lost the election to try and illegally regain power by framing innocent Americans. Many of them they suffered with an elaborate hoax. Legislation that would provide federal protection for financial institutions that serve state-authorized marijuana and ancillary businesses passed a U.S. House committee Thursday. The House Financial Services Committee voted 45-15 to advance the proposed bill after amending it to include provisions to provide a safe harbor for insurance companies and improve access of financial services to minority and women-owned cannabis businesses. Steve Hawkins, executive director for the Marijuana Policy Project, said in a statement, "Regardless of where members stand on legalization, they can agree that it is in the public interest to make banking available to cannabis businesses in states where it is legal." The bill now goes to the full House for consideration. Banks generally balk at servicing the marijuana industry for fear it could expose them to legal trouble from the federal government, which still considers marijuana illegal. As a result, a large portion of the fledgling industry is left to operate on a cash-only basis, which creates security, money laundering, and other criminal concerns. The proposed measure would prevent federal banking regulators from punishing financial institutions that serve cannabis-related businesses that comply with state laws. President Trump on Thursday extended an immigration designation granting protected status to Liberians in the United States for an additional year, just 3 days before it was to expire, a rare move from a president who has taken a hardline stance on immigration. Trump last year ordered an end to deferred enforced departure status for Liberians, which was first granted to them during the presidency of his fellow Republican George W. Bush, and enabled the immigrants to work and protected them from deportation. Advocates estimate that roughly 4,000 Liberians in the U.S. are protected by DED. Trump had declared a one-year wind-down period, which set the final expiration date of the status as March 31st. But on Thursday, Trump said he had changed his mind, winning unusual praise from some immigration advocates who have fought his policies in courts during the 2 years of his presidency. They argued that allowing the status to expire would force people who had lived in the United States for decades and had U.S. citizen children to lose their livelihoods and face the prospect of deportation to a country they left decades ago, a country struggling with a fragile economy and healthcare system. A spokesman for Liberia's embassy in the United States, Gabriel Williams, praised the announcement. Lyft set the price for its stock at $72 per share late Thursday, setting the stage for the ride-hailing pioneer's hotly anticipated stock market debut. The price is at the high end of a revision Lyft made after strong investor demand prompted the company to increase its initial goal of fetching $62 to $68 for each of the 32.5 million shares sold in the IPO. The price sets Lyft's market value at $24 billion, which will change quickly Friday after the shares start trading on the NASDAQ exchange. Lyft has been in fierce competition with its larger rival Uber to woo riders and investors. Lyft has been gaining ground on Uber in the past 2 years, which enabled it to double its revenue last year to $2.2 billion, the kind of growth that tends to wow investors. Uber is expected to make an even bigger splash when it completes its IPO later this year. The IPO represents a watershed moment for ride-hailing, an industry hatched from the rise of smartphones. Now that both Lyft and Uber have made it easy to summon a ride on a mobile app, more people are already starting to wonder if owning their own cars will make sense in the future. Mexico's National Disaster Prevention Center raised its alert for the Popocatépetl volcano due to increased activity Thursday. The agency raised the warning level from yellow phase 2 to yellow phase 3 after an eruption sent a plume of ash more than 1.5 miles into the air. It also recorded 61 exhalations at the volcano in a 24-hour period. Yellow phase 3 is the highest level of warning before the red phase, which would include an advisory for people around the volcano to evacuate the area. The Popocatépetl volcano is located in the states of Morelos and Puebla in central Mexico. At more than 17,800 feet, it's the second highest peak in Mexico. Another eruption earlier this month sent ash nearly 1 mile into the air and spreading incandescent material within a 1.6-mile radius. Disney said Thursday it's banning all forms of smoking inside all of its theme parks, beginning May 1st. The new policy, announced in a company blog post, applies to Florida's Walt Disney World, its Disneyland theme parks, water parks, ESPN Wide World of Sports Complex, and the Downtown Disney District in California. Designated smoking areas, which have allowed restricted smoking inside, will be moved outside park entrances. The company said smoking will still be allowed at Disney resort hotels. The ban includes the use of electronic cigarettes or vaping. A designated smoking area at Disneyland in Southern California has been removed for the opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which is expected to draw big crowds, including children. Disney visitors will be allowed to re-enter parks after leaving to have a smoke. And that's your update for this Friday, March 29th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.